Tonight, you'll probably scroll through your phone for 2 hours before bed. You won't think about it. You'll just do it. But 300,000 years ago, your ancestors were doing something almost as repetitive, just not with a screen. What did they actually do all day? Not fighting saber-toothed tigers, not huddling in fear, waiting to die young. That image, the brutish caveman dragging a club, terrified and starving, is mostly fiction. The real answer is far stranger and far calmer. For most of human history, a typical day looked less like survival horror and more like a part-time job with very good benefits. In the 1960s, anthropologist Richard Borshay Lee spent months living with the Jew/Huansi people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last hunter-gatherer societies on Earth. He expected exhaustion. He expected scarcity. Instead, he found something that upended decades of assumptions about prehistoric life. The adults worked, on average, around 15 hours a week to feed themselves. 15 hours? Not 15 hours a day, 15 hours a week. The rest of the time? Resting, socializing, storytelling, napping in the shade. Lee's research, later expanded by anthropologist Marshall Salins into the idea of the original affluent society, suggested something radical. Hunter-gatherers weren't poor and desperate. They were, in some ways, the first leisure class. That doesn't mean life was easy. It means effort was efficient. Your ancestors didn't need to work constantly because they didn't want much. Food was shared. Shelter was simple. Status wasn't measured in possessions. So what filled the rest of the day? Mostly talking. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied the Jew/Huansi decades after Lee and found something fascinating. During the day, conversations were dominated by practical matters. Who found food where? Who needed help? Complaints, logistics, gossip about disputes. But at night, around the fire, the subject changed completely. After dark, over 60% of conversation shifted to storytelling, myths, histories, jokes about absent members of the group. Weissner's research suggested firelight itself changed the social mood. Daytime was for survival talk. Nighttime was for connection. Sound familiar? You do the same thing. You handle logistics during the day, emails, errands, tasks. Then at night, you unwind with stories. Except now the fire is a screen and the storyteller is a streaming algorithm. The need didn't disappear. It just changed format. What about the actual hunting and gathering? It wasn't constant danger. It was skill, patience, and deep environmental knowledge passed down for generations. Children learned to track animals by reading bent grass and faint footprints. Elders knew which roots were edible after a drought and which berries would make you sick. This wasn't guesswork. It was an oral library of survival information, refined over tens of thousands of years. And gathering, done mostly by women in many hunter-gatherer societies, often provided the majority of daily calories. Reliable plant foods, nuts, tubers, fruit. Meat was valuable, but unpredictable. You could fail to find an animal for days. You could not, however, fail to find a root if you knew where to look. This is where something interesting happens in the story of human evolution. The brain that lets you read this sentence right now, the same brain capable of abstract thought, planning, and language, didn't evolve because of hunting alone. Anthropologist Sarah Hrdy has argued that human cognitive development was deeply shaped by cooperative childcare, multiple adults, not just parents, helping raise children. This freed up time. It distributed risk. It built trust networks that extended beyond a single family. In other words, your ancestors weren't lone wolves dragging clubs through the wilderness. They were deeply social, deeply interdependent, constantly negotiating relationships. A typical day, then, might look like this. Wake near dawn. No alarm needed. Eat something already gathered or stored. Spend a few hours foraging, tracking, or checking traps, depending on the season. Return by early afternoon. Rest during the hottest part of the day. Process food. Make tools. Repair shelter. Then, as the light faded, gather. This is the part modern life has almost completely erased. Group gathering, every single evening, with no agenda except being together. Compare that to your week. How many evenings end with you simply sitting with other people, telling stories, with nothing to accomplish? For most of human history, that wasn't a luxury. It was the default setting. There's a reason your brain still craves this. The need for evening connection, for a shared fire, even if it's now a glowing rectangle in your hand, isn't a modern invention. It's an ancient groove worn deep into your neurology. Researcher Sarah Blaffer Hardy and others have noted that human infants are unusually demanding compared to other primates. They require enormous investment. This pushed early humans toward cooperative breeding, where grandmothers, siblings, and community members all helped raise children. Some researchers call this the grandmother hypothesis, the idea that menopause itself evolved because older women who stopped reproducing could instead help raise grandchildren, increasing the survival odds of the whole group. This means your ancestors' days weren't organized around individual survival, they were organized around the survival of the group. That changes how you think about loneliness, doesn't it? When you feel isolated scrolling alone at midnight, some ancient part of your brain registers it as unusual, even alarming. For nearly the entire span of human existence, being alone for long stretches simply didn't happen. You were almost always within earshot of someone. So what did cavemen actually do all day? They worked less than you. They rested more than you. They spent enormous amounts of time talking, joking, and sitting near a fire with people who knew them deeply. It wasn't primitive. It was, in many ways, more socially rich than the average modern day. You live longer. You have medicine, electricity, instant communication across continents. These are not small things. But somewhere in the trade, the evening fire disappeared. The 15-hour workweek became unrecognizable. The guaranteed nightly gathering became optional, scheduled, often replaced by a screen that mimics connection without quite delivering it. Tonight, when you scroll through your phone for 2 hours before bed, you won't think about it. You'll just do it. But now you know what you're really looking for. Not entertainment, not distraction. The fire.